So we're into the second of the 7 letters to the churches in John's day. And so this letter to Smyrna is interesting. Most of these letters have a particular pattern. There's some sort of encouragement and some sort of rebuke from Jesus. You're doing some things good and you're doing some things not so good. Smyrna gets only praise and encouragement. They're facing such suffering and hardship that Jesus apparently doesn't have anything negative to say about them, and it's just encouragement. There's another letter where he does just that, and there's some letters where he only rebukes. But most of them actually have this balance. So that's kind of interesting as we dive in to the second letter to Smyrna. Revelation 2, 8 through 11. Write this to the angel of the church in Smyrna. These are the words of the one who is the first and the last, who died and came back to life. I know your hardship and poverty, though you are actually rich. I also know the hurtful things that have been spoken about you by those who say they are Jews, though they are not, but are really Satan's synagogue. Don't be afraid of what you're about to suffer. Look, the devil is going to throw some of you into prison in order to test you. You will suffer hardship for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. If you can hear, listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Those who emerge victorious won't be hurt by the second death. Just as a reminder before we jump into the observation, in the opening intro video, I laid out 4 keys to understanding this book of Revelation. And the 4th one was that it was written for a suffering church. And over the centuries, it's been those who are suffering true persecution and oppression and hardship that have received the most comfort from a book like Revelation. And this short little letter is a great example of that. I can say, for me, my life has been relatively comfortable and safe. I can relate to some of this. I've experienced hurtful things and people saying slanderous things about me and stuff, but I've never been thrown into prison. I've never suffered to the point of death. And so there's a whole part about this that I just personally can't fully relate to. And yet there are people in the world today that are experiencing true suffering and hardship. Christians that are being persecuted out of their homes, losing their lives because of their faith, especially in other parts of the world. And so just a good reminder of that disconnect for me. I have to kind of intentionally put myself into someone else's shoes to even start to experience really what would it have been like for the church in Smyrna to receive this particular letter from Jesus. As we get into the observations themselves, it's interesting. Smyrna is one of the few of the 7 letters that there's nothing negative that Jesus has to say to them. There's no rebuke of sin or something that they're doing wrong. It's all just comfort. Jesus is very clearly saying, look, I know what you're going through. I love that. Like just the reminder of, I know, I see you. Don't be afraid. This is going to happen, but you can get through this. And so this is Jesus coming and really meeting them where they're at. It's really significant to just reflect on how Jesus introduces himself in each letter. They're different each time, and they're not throwaways either. They're very intentional. The way Jesus introduces himself here is the one who is the first and the last, who died and came back to life. And so he calls on his identity as the one who conquered death, very specifically because of what they're dealing with. As he goes down, he says, you're suffering even to the point of death. But if you're faithful, I will give you the crown of life and you won't be hurt by the second death. And so he links his own identity directly with what they're going through. And I think that's meant to give them great comfort and confidence moving forward. This starts a theme that will continue, especially, if we go all the way to the end of the book in Revelation 20. But this idea of the second death, that's not really a symbol or image that we find in other parts of the New Testament, but it seems, as we keep getting into it, John is making a distinction between what he would call the first death and the second death. And it kind of makes sense if you just kind of lay it out, but the first death would be the physical death that all of us, unless we are the fortunate to be alive when Jesus comes again during his second coming, we all will experience physical death. But for the Christian, that's a sad part of reality here in this life, but it's not the end. There is hope beyond that because we have the one who died and came back to life. And so the second death would be the eternal separation. That would be the eternal hell that awaits those that have rejected Jesus and his good news. And so he is framing that to say, you are suffering hardship, and I know it's hard, but I'm with you, I see you, and there's a hope even beyond death that we are looking for. We look forward to bodily resurrection, and so he's framing that in this. On the actual suffering that they're facing, we could say a few things about that. It's interesting to me to see John. He says, look, there are Jews in your town that are persecuting you. They're not really Jews because the Jews are the people of God. This is not anti-Semitic. Most of the early Christians were Jews, but the whole point was that Jesus came as the king of the Jews. He is the fulfillment of God's people. And if they've rejected Jesus, they've rejected their king, John is saying they're not acting like true Jews anymore at this moment. They're actually being animated by something else, by Satan himself. And so they are Satan's synagogue, and the devil is going to throw you into prison. A quick word, we'll get into more of this over the chapters to come, but the words attributed to Satan are important. So Satan, it's not a proper noun actually, it's always the Satan in the original text, and it's a word that literally means the accuser. Devil is a word that means like slanderer. And he's also called at different times the deceiver. So I like to take it back to those roots because it helps me frame in my mind what exactly is Satan up to? What is his role? What is his power? His power is to heap accusations, to say you're worthless, you're a sinner, you don't deserve God's love. His role is to slander and to deceive. And that's the kind of thing that he's doing through these Jews who are the main players of opposition for the church in Smyrna, but that's the sort of activity that he does against God's people, as he accuses, he slanders, and he deceives. Finally, I want to just end on this note that I find a lot of comfort in this line right here. Jesus says, you will suffer hardship for 10 days. I know while I can't experience the extent of their suffering, I have been in hard places, and some of the hardest parts about it is not knowing if it will ever end. Jesus, his word of comfort to the church in Smyrna is, I see you, I know what you're going through, and guess what? It has a limited time frame. It's only going to be for a short time. Now you can take this literally. I tend to think of it more symbolically based on the rest of the book of Revelation, but it can also be actual 10 days. That's fine too. But either way, the whole point is Jesus saying it's limited. It's a short time period. Whether your suffering is a day, a month, a year, or more, Jesus, if he were to show up to you in your life and say, I know how long it is. I've limited its days. It's going to have an ending. That actually gives you more confidence to face it, to continue faithfully, even to the point of death. Jesus is giving them this great word of comfort to say, I've numbered the days of your suffering, and it's going to have an end. And at the end, you will receive the crown of life. You will emerge victorious. And the second death can't touch you. So there's a lot of comfort in this, in the midst of Jesus just coming and saying, I see you, I know you. I have nothing bad to say about you. You're going through some hard stuff, but I'm with you in this, and it's going to end.